The unbound self. When truth disrupts the agreed-upon silence, there is a threshold that exists in the geography of a serious life. A line not drawn in sand, but etched in the expectations of others. You don't cross it because it is forbidden by any noble decree, but because its very existence terrifies those who have built their equilibrium on your willingness to remain contained. Your smallness is a cornerstone in their architecture of comfort. And when you finally step across, not with a rebellious stomp, but with the quiet, irrevocable weight of a choice made in your own soul, you will hear a sound. It is not a thunderclap, but a snap deep within the machinery of your shared world. You'll see it in their eyes before you hear it anywhere else, a flicker of confusion, then the cold dawn of panic. They are not afraid of your defiance. They are terrified of the weakness your action exposes, a fragility they had meticulously hidden even from themselves. This is the unspoken contract upon which so much of the social world quietly operates. You will stay predictable. You will remain manageable. You will shoulder ambiguities and swallow disappointments so that others may feel lighter. As long as you perform this role, the surface of things remains placid, stable. But the moment you refuse to recite your lines, the moment you choose the raw, unvarnished truth over the soothing balm of comfort, you become a problem. Not because you are wrong, but because you have become real. Authenticity in a system built on calibrated fictions is the ultimate disruption. When you finally stand and utter that, no, you do not simply refuse a request. You shatter an illusion. You force those around you to confront the shaky foundation of their own constructed identities. Their entire sense of order was predicated on a belief in your perpetual pliability. They believed the script was immutable. They could provoke, nudge, or disregard, and you would bend, absorb, and return to form. Your compliance was a hidden keystone in their psychic architecture. And when you don't bend, when you respond not with the expected fear or fluster, but with a clarity that rings like a bell in a closed room, you transform before their eyes. You become an equation they cannot solve, a variable they cannot control. That is the true source of the panic. People do not fear strength itself. They fear what unwavering strength reveals about their own accommodation with weakness. You did not attack them. You did not need to. You simply ceased your participation in a collective lie. And that withdrawal of consent is enough to destabilize entire ecosystems of relation because lies require constant collective upkeep. Truth simply is. What washes over them in that moment is not mere anger. It is a pure, undiluted terror. Terror of exposure, of being held accountable not by you, but by the glaring light of a reality they've avoided. Terror that the story they told themselves of being superior, justified, or inherently correct no longer holds under scrutiny. Without intending to, you have become the mirror they spent a lifetime avoiding. And mirrors possess a unique cruelty. They do not argue, accuse, or explain. They only reflect. Understand this distinction, for it is everything. You did not create chaos by standing your ground. You revealed the chaos that was already there, humming beneath the surface of polite agreements. You did not conjure a nightmare from malice. You merely opened the curtains on a room where something had been buried, and creatures that thrive only in darkness do not greet the dawn with calm acceptance. This is the engine behind their sudden scrutiny, the whispers, the rewritten histories, the cynical questioning of your motives. It is not a quest for truth. It is a frantic scramble to regain control of a narrative that is slipping from their grasp. They need more than anything to cast you as the villain once more. Because if you are not the problem, then they are forced to gaze upon their own actions, their silent complacencies, and the fuller selves they chose not to become. But here is the cornerstone you must cling to. Once you cross that line, there is no returning to the country of your former smallness. Nor should you wish to, for that return journey demands a slow, psychic shrinking, a suffocation of your own spirit to make others comfortable with their own dishonesty. It is a form of self-annihilation by inches, and your soul knows it. This is why standing firm, even as it costs you their approval, carries a strange, clean pain. It is the pain of a bone being set, not broken. This is not about vengeance. It is about alignment. When your outer actions finally come into concert with your inner values, a profound stabilization occurs within you. A gyroscope spins true at your core. And when that happens, the people who relied on your confusion, your self-doubt, your hunger for their validation, feel their leverage evaporate. They sense the solidity in you, and it unsettles them to their foundations. This is why they spiral. True dominance in any sphere of life does not spring from aggression. It flows from coherence, from knowing with a bone-deep certainty who you are, what you will honor, and where your irrevocable lines are drawn. When you achieve this, even imperfectly, you become unpredictable in the most powerful way possible. You are no longer merely reacting to their stimuli. You are choosing from an internal script. And genuine, principled choice is utterly terrifying to those whose only tool is manipulation. Oh, let them be uncomfortable. Let their panic rise. That climate is not your responsibility to manage. Your covenant is with yourself, to continue speaking truth, especially when your voice trembles, to hold your standards high even when the cost is the familiar terrain of old relationships, to resist the siren call of over-explaining yourself to those who are invested in misunderstanding you. For in crossing that line, you awakened more than fear in them. You awakened a dormant strength in yourself. And once that genie is out of the bottle, the real nightmare for them is not your existence. It is the end of their ability to dictate its terms. Stand there. Hold the line. Do not apologize for becoming solid, for taking up the space that is rightfully yours. The world has a surplus of agreeable ghosts. What it aches for are individuals brave enough to confront reality and pay its price. You have already begun to pay it. And that is why, in your world and in theirs, everything has irrevocably changed. When you finally decide to shed the convenient masks, the ones handed to you by family, tradition, or mere expectation, the transformation is not a private affair. It radiates outward, a seismic pulse felt instantly in the relational field around you. People are attuned to a version of you that is pliable, predictable, and safe. This was the you that followed unspoken rules, offered smiles when required, nodded along to conversations that rang hollow, and swallowed grievances to keep the fragile peace. That you was manageable. That you was a known quantity in their emotional calculus, someone they could navigate without fear of unexpected consequence. But the moment you refuse to stay within those borrowed contours, the moment your peace becomes more vital than their comfort, their foundations begin to tremble. You may not set out to cause waves. Often this upheaval is simply the byproduct of choosing authenticity. You stop offering lengthy explanations for your reasonable choices. You decline to absorb subtle insults or undermining comments. You draw boundaries where before there was only fuzzy, porous space. To you, these actions feel like coming up for air, natural, necessary, the fruit of a long overdue conversation with your own self-respect. But to those who built their strategies upon your compliance, your newfound clarity is a detonation. It challenges the entire hidden framework designed to keep you in an assigned role. Where they anticipated pliancy, they meet resolve. Where they expected hesitation, they encounter decisive action. Where they hoped for silence, they hear a voice firm with conviction. And in that gap between expectation and reality, panic is born. Not because you have acted with malice, but because you have become unpredictable in the only way that truly matters. You have become real. Their deepest fear is not the truth you speak, but the portrait of themselves that your truth inadvertently paints. For years, perhaps, they have sustained narratives of your dependency, your limitations, your endless loyalty. They comforted themselves with the idea that you would never challenge the status quo, never disrupt the unspoken hierarchy, never demand recognition for your intrinsic worth. Your simple refusal to participate in that fiction causes those narratives to crumble into dust. In their mental map, you were a fixed point, a predictable coordinate. Now you have moved. You are navigating by your own stars, and that autonomous movement is terrifying to those who have oriented their sense of control around your fixed position. It is critical to internalize this. Your stance, your insistence on authenticity, does not make you the aggressor. You need not manipulate, argue, or attack to unleash chaos. The chaos was always present, latent in the substrata of unspoken insecurities, fragile egos, and carefully buried fears. Your role is not the arsonist, but the one who finally turns on the light. You illuminate the dusty, neglected corners of their carefully curated comfort zones. They may label it confrontation, but it is, at its root, simply honesty. They have dwelt in a house of illusions, and your refusal to pretend the walls are solid exposes the rot in the beams. When illusions fail, panic is the first and most honest responder. The reactions you witness, the flustered hesitation, the manufactured confusion, the hot anger, the veiled attempts to diminish you, are all symptoms of this internal crisis. They are scrambling to regain governance over a reality that has ceased to obey their old commands. They are not reacting to you so much as to the destabilization of a worldview that depended on your passive participation. They may try to frame you as difficult, selfish, or disruptive, but these are mere labels hastily slapped over a crack in their own facade. They are attempts to rationalize the primal fear that arises when faced with an undeniable truth. You are no longer a character in their story. You are writing your own, yet within their disarray there is a profound power in your position. This power does not stem from domination or aggression, but from coherence. Your actions align with your values. Your refusal to shrink or offer unnecessary apologies demonstrates a clarity of purpose that is impervious to their noise. When people encounter someone whose internal compass dictates their external path, it is deeply unsettling. They are confronted not only with your truth, but indirectly with their own dissonance. In you, they see the courage to live authentically, a reflection that can be painfully hard to bear. This is why stepping into truth is a revolutionary act. It transcends personal integrity. It disrupts entire systems that feed on predictability and subdued acquiescence. By claiming your space, asserting your standards, and refusing to endorse false narratives, you compel those around you to face realities they have diligently avoided. Their panic, their confusion, their disorientation, these are not your creations. They are the birth pangs of a reality long denied, now forcing its way into the light. As you walk this path, remember, their reactions are not yours to manage. You are not required to soothe their fears, justify your choices to willfully deaf ears, or dilute your essence for the sake of their convenience. Your strength lies in your constancy, in your unwavering fidelity to what you know to be true. You are not the source of their storm. You are the unexpected weather vane that shows them which way the wind has always been blowing. You are a catalyst, allowing hidden tensions to surface. While the discomfort you spark may be intense, it is a testament to the light you've brought into a darkened room. Ultimately, choosing truth over diminishment is an act of profound liberation. It frees you from the heavy cloak of others' expectations, and in doing so, reveals the delicate, brittle nature of the realities they constructed. It demonstrates what becomes possible when someone chooses sovereignty over submission. Their panic, though loud and immediate, is a signal. It tells you that you have moved beyond the predictable, beyond the controllable, into the realm of genuine agency. You are no longer a scribe in the margins of someone else's text. You are the author of your own narrative, and in that authorship you have become a living mirror, reflecting both your own strength and the unacknowledged limitations of those who gaze into it. By standing firm, by honoring your integrity, you have done something rare. You have become uncontainable. And in that uncontainability lies your freedom, and perhaps the first faint echo of an awakening in those around you, whether they welcome it or not. Their panic is the direct evidence of the power you now wield, simply by being whole. When you act from integrity and decline to conform to the subtle, pervasive pressures around you, it can feel as if you are the source of disruption, as if you are shaking the very pillars of your life and the lives intertwined with yours. But this perception, though emotionally convincing, is a distortion. You are not manufacturing chaos. You are revealing it. Chaos already resides in the shadowy corners where people stash their fears, in the quiet compromises they broker with their conscience, in the little lies they tell themselves to maintain a feeling of safety. Beneath the polished surface of daily life, there is turbulence. Most manage this not by addressing it, but by a collective, silent pact to pretend it isn't there, to ignore the cracks, to speak around the unspeakable, to assume the world will conform to their preferred illusions. When you step into honesty, when you withdraw your consent from this convenient fiction, you do not generate disorder. You flood the room with light. And in that light, the existing disorder can no longer hide. People often misinterpret your refusal to shrink as an act of aggression. They perceive your boundaries, your assertiveness, your commitment to truth as a provocation. But you are not attacking, you are illuminating. You are holding up a mirror to what is. The insecurities, the hidden weaknesses, the unresolved tensions. They were always present, simmering beneath a thin crust of normalcy, waiting for a moment of honesty to breach the surface. By refusing to participate in their suppression, you trigger the natural consequences of a system built on denial. Those cozy in the darkness find themselves suddenly exposed, blinking in a harsh light they did not sanction. Their fear often masquerades as hostility, because in their disorientation they cannot separate the messenger from the unsettling message. The chaos you witness, the fear, the scrambled narratives, the desperate bids for control, is not a mirror of your intent. It is a reflection of what has been ignored, papered over, and left to fester. Human beings are architects of predictability. They craft scripts for themselves and others, relying on unspoken agreements and the assumed compliance of those around them to maintain a sense of order. When you step off the script, when you become a character with independent motives, the entire stage shudders. They are forced to confront an unsettling truth. The world is not as stable, as controllable as they desperately need to believe. This is why your authentic presence feels like a threat, even in your silence. You are a walking, talking reminder that life is not neat, that actions carry weight, and that avoiding reality does not dissolve it. By choosing wholeness, you force people to reckon with what they have sidestepped, the uncomfortable truths about their own choices, their relationships, their capacities for honesty. Your clarity does not invent new problems. It simply exposes the old ones now grown in the dark. What makes this dynamic particularly potent is that the people around you may be wholly unconscious of the chaos within their own systems. They exist in a fog of selective memory, convenient rationalization, and willful blindness. They have grown adept at dismissing discomfort, reframing failures, and attributing instability to external forces. When you refuse to endorse this ecosystem of avoidance, when you withdraw your energy from the collective illusion of calm, you force buried realities into the open. Your consistent integrity acts as a catalyst. You are the spark that ignites a long, stagnant atmosphere. The shadows of insecurity, the ghosts of compromise, the weight of avoidance, they were always there, but they thrived in the absence of light. Your presence, your unwavering authenticity provides that light. The discomfort that follows is not about. It is about the fragility of the structures they built to keep reality at bay. They may accuse you of rocking the boat, of being difficult, of craving drama. But these accusations are incantations, spells they cast to try and restore the old silence. They are attempts to manage the unmanageable truth that your being has made manifest. Moreover, it is vital to see that revealing chaos is not a destructive act, but a liberating one. Chaos is not inherently negative. It is the raw material of change, the fertile ground of growth. By exposing it, you offer everyone involved a chance to confront what has been festering, to take responsibility, and to rebuild on the solid ground of truth instead of the shifting sands of pretense. Your refusal to enable deception is more than personal integrity. It is an invitation to a more authentic way of being. That invitation, though it may be met with resistance, is the necessary first step toward genuine stability, a stability earned, not assumed. The reactions you observe are proof that you are effectively disrupting a system built on false premises. The panic, the blame shifting, the manipulation, these are last-ditch efforts to plaster over the cracks your clarity has revealed. But truth, once aired, cannot be forced back into its box. You have become the focal point through which disorder is recognized. And that is the true reason your presence feels so profoundly unsettling. This process teaches a crucial, counterintuitive lesson. The world is rarely as orderly as it seems. Surface calm is often a performance, maintained by a cast of actors who have agreed not to break character. By stepping into authenticity, you demonstrate that the underlying chaos is not only real but addressable. Your courage in facing it directly becomes a model, showing that fear and disorder exist not to paralyze, but to point toward what must be healed for growth to occur. In essence, your refusal to participate in collective denial forces a reckoning. It demands a confrontation with neglected realities. You do not create the nightmare. You turn on the lights, and in that illuminated space, what was hidden must finally be seen, acknowledged, and dealt with. Your actions are not destructive. They are revelatory. Through this revelation, you liberate not only yourself, but also create the conditions for everyone in your orbit to engage with a world that is real, complex, and ripe for transformation. The chaos was always there. You simply gave it the dignity of being seen. Genuine influence and enduring power have nothing to do with volume, aggression, or domination. They are not products of bending others to your will or enforcing compliance through fear. Real strength, the kind that commands a room with a whisper and earns respect without a demand, emerges from a single, profound source: coherence. This is the seamless alignment of who you are, what you believe, and how you move through the world. Coherence is not a flamboyant trait. It is quiet, deep, and unmistakable. It lives in the steady gaze of someone whose choices are consistent with their values, whose behavior does not warp under the pressure of external approval. It is in this unwavering internal order that a potent form of unpredictability and true power takes root. When you act with coherence, you remove the very leverage others use to manipulate or control. Those accustomed to navigating life through pressure tactics and emotional inference rely on uncertainty. Their currency is your potential for doubt, for bending, for choosing comfort over principle. But coherence makes you predictably yourself while becoming beautifully unpredictable to them. Your actions cease to be reactions. They become deliberate expressions of an internal code. This kind of unpredictability terrifies the manipulator, for it renders their entire toolkit obsolete. You cannot be steered by guilt if your compass points to integrity. You cannot be derailed by intimidation if your path is fixed by purpose. Imagine the moment of encounter. You may be calm, even quiet, but every decision you make broadcasts a refusal to compromise your core. You do not flinch at provocation, you observe it. You do not seek permission, you proceed from understanding. You are not reactive because your responses are filtered through principle, not emotion. Those who approach with the intent to dominate or manipulate find themselves off balance. They expected hesitation and found resolve. They anticipated pliability and met an unyielding alignment with values. In that moment, you become an enigma, not because you are erratic, but because your moves cannot be forecast by their limited transactional logic. Cultivating coherence demands rigorous self-awareness. It requires knowing your non-negotiable principles, understanding the contours of your boundaries, and accepting the costs of upholding them. This internal foundation is everything. Without it, consistency is impossible, and without consistency, there is no lasting influence. If your inner world is a storm of conflicting desires and unexamined fears, your external actions will reflect that turbulence. But when you achieve inner clarity, when thought, belief, and action harmonize, you emit a silent authority that is palpably felt. People sense, often before they can articulate it, that you are anchored in a reality they cannot sway. That perception alone reshapes every dynamic. The profound elegance of this power is that it does not depend on the weakness of others. It does not require their failure or submission. It springs from the completeness of your own inner architecture. Others may prod, challenge, or attempt to undermine you. But if your every response is filtered through a coherent framework, their efforts dissipate like waves against a cliff. You have built an internal citadel that cannot be breached by external siege. This is the essence of coherence. It creates an unshakable freedom within the constraints of your own principles. The unpredictability born of coherence is often misread. We are conditioned to equate power with noise, with visible force. But the most formidable power is quiet, patient, and deliberate. It does not announce itself with boasts or threats. It declares itself in the quiet consistency of choices, in the polite but firm no, in the clarity of purpose that no amount of social pressure can fog. This power unnerves those who trade in manipulation because it exposes their methods as feeble. It forces them to confront a person they cannot predict, control, or diminish, a person whose actions are authored from within. Furthermore, coherence breeds a resilience that is itself a form of power. When your actions are rooted in core values, external storms cannot easily destabilize you. Adversity tests all, but those without internal alignment often fracture. They compromise, lash out, or collapse under pressure. The coherent individual, however, meets the storm with a different posture. They respond not with panic, but with measured decisions that reflect their principles. This resilience amplifies influence, for it teaches others that attempts to destabilize you are futile. Strength without coherence is brittle. It can be outmaneuvered. Coherence without strength may be admirable but lacks impact. Fused together, they create a force that is both unassailable and magnetically compelling. Coherence also cultivates a respect that fear can never manufacture. People are drawn, almost irresistibly, to those whose words and deeds match, whose integrity is non-negotiable. This respect accrues silently over time, building a form of social capital that cannot be purchased or coerced. Where aggression demands temporary compliance, coherence inspires lasting trust. And in the long arc of any relationship, personal or professional, trust is the ultimate currency. It forges alliances, secures loyalty, and establishes you as a center of gravity in your environment, not through dominance but through the sheer weight of your consistency. In life's gray areas where decisions are fraught with competing values, coherence provides a navigational star. It is the cultivated clarity to choose in alignment with overarching principles, even when the immediate path is murky. This integrity is not situational, it is structural. It makes you not only formidable but profoundly trustworthy. Your strength is sensed before it is seen, and your presence quietly recalibrates the expectations of everyone around you. Finally, the power of coherence is compounded by patience, the discipline of non-reaction. Coherent individuals do not leap at provocation. They pause, observe, and respond with intention. This patience is a strategic superpower. It conserves energy, allows for the selection of meaningful battles, and ensures actions are strategic, not merely reflexive. To those used to volatility, this composed deliberation is deeply disorienting. They cannot anticipate the rhythm or reasoning of someone guided by an internal metronome. That very uncertainty amplifies the aura of power that coherence generates. In the end, the truest power is not seized from others, it is cultivated within. It is coherence. It is the alignment of belief and behavior into a single, resonant note. It is the internal order that neutralizes external chaos. It is the quiet confidence born of self-knowledge, paired with the discipline to act accordingly. Coherence creates an unpredictable constancy, commands deep respect, and wields influence because it is grounded in an integrity that cannot be feigned. Those who embody it do not need to control others. The world naturally adjusts around them because they represent a consistency that is rare, formidable, and fundamentally authentic. By committing to coherence, you forge a strength that cannot be undermined by circumstance or manipulation. You become unpredictable in all the right ways, not because you are erratic, but because you are irrevocably true to a self-authored script. Your power is silent, your influence undeniable, your presence transformative. In a world saturated with noise and deception, coherence is the anchor, the compass, and the quiet, unstoppable force that reorders everything it touches. The fear that erupts when people are held accountable runs deeper than surface annoyance or bruised pride. It is a primal, visceral response, and it is rarely about the person standing before them. Accountability acts as a merciless mirror, forcing a confrontation with the self. With past choices, quiet failures, moral shortcuts, and all the compromises made to evade discomfort or responsibility. Most individuals construct intricate personal narratives where they are the hero, the victim, or at least blameless given the circumstances. They employ selective memory, clever rationalization, and the frantic distraction of busyness to avoid seeing the full chain of consequences stemming from their actions. When another person operates with a clarity and integrity that calls these truths into the light, the terror that follows is not a response to aggression. It is the panic of seeing one's own reflection in a mirror held up by another, revealing aspects of the self long relegated to the shadows. Accountability is excruciating because it highlights the chasm between the person we profess to be and the person our choices reveal us to be. It illuminates the hypocrisies woven into the fabric of daily life, those moments where principle was traded for convenience, where courage was surrendered to fear, where a minor moral compromise seemed a reasonable price for social ease. People can tolerate this internal dissonance so long as it remains private, unchallenged. But when someone withdraws their consent from the collective silence, when they refuse to validate the evasion, that dissonance becomes a deafening roar. The mind can no longer ignore its own contradiction, and panic is the psyche's first alarm. A profound function of accountability is its enforcement of consequence in real time. While many pay lip service to the idea of cause and effect, they often live insulated from immediate repercussion by buffers of denial, excuse, or social collusion. When a person of integrity acts, those buffers vanish. They are faced not only with the impact of their behavior, but with the undeniable fact that someone else sees it and will not look away. This is psychologically destabilizing. It shatters the cherished illusion of control, the belief that one can manage perceptions and outcomes indefinitely. Accountability replaces that illusion with a cold, clarifying uncertainty. This fear is also intimately tied to identity. We define ourselves not just by our actions, but by the stories we craft about those actions. These stories are curated to minimize discomfort and preserve a sense of moral continuity, however superficial. When your authentic presence challenges those stories, when you refuse to endorse their edited version of events, you force a crisis of identity. The panic you witness is often the sound of a self-image fracturing. They feel exposed because the facade they present to the world no longer aligns with the reality you reflect back, and there is nowhere left to hide. Accountability terrifies because it dismantles the architecture of excuse. Excuses are the ego's shield, deflecting the blunt force of responsibility. But when met with someone whose integrity is coherent and unwavering, these shields turn to paper. Excuses dissolve in the face of principled consistency. There is no ambiguous middle ground in which to take refuge. That very clarity is deeply threatening to those accustomed to operating in moral twilight. Furthermore, accountability does not merely highlight a single misstep, it exposes patterns. People often operate in cycles of behavior that are damaging, yet these cycles persist as long as they remain unchallenged. When someone models a different way, when they consistently choose truth over collusion, these patterns are dragged into the light. Each choice, each avoidance, each inconsistency is suddenly part of a visible, repetitive sequence. The panic that ensues stems from the dawning, horrifying awareness that the behavior is not an anomaly, but a systemic feature of their being, and now they must face it. This fear is magnified by social ecology. We are not accountable in a vacuum. We exist within webs of relationship, hierarchy, and mutual expectation. When one person ceases to enable deceit or avoidance, it threatens not only an individual's private coping mechanisms, but the stability of the entire group that has co-signed those mechanisms. The panic therefore ripples outward, becoming a shared anxiety. The person acting with integrity no longer bolsters the collective illusion, and the entire structure feels the tremor. It is crucial to see that accountability need not be loud or punitive to be devastatingly effective. Its power resides in visibility and steadfastness. The simple, repeated refusal to accept dishonesty or disrespect sends a signal that rewires the environment. People sense that the old rules, where certain behaviors were tolerated, are now obsolete. This realization is profoundly unsettling as it attacks their assumptions about safety, predictability, and the permanence of an unjust status quo. Accountability also compresses time. The choices we defer, the responsibilities we shirk, the compromises we make, they accumulate. Accountability collapses the comfortable distance between action and consequence. It insists that time does not erase responsibility, it only compounds it. Facing someone who embodies integrity, there is no infinite postponement of reckoning. One must confront both the past and the future trajectory of their choices. This elimination of the later is a potent source of anxiety. Ultimately, the panic, resistance, and fear you observe are not indictments of your actions, but X-rays of others' internal landscapes. You are the catalyst that makes the invisible visible, the force that gives form to suppressed truths. The moment you embody integrity, you illuminate the discrepancies, the failures, and the moral debts that have accrued in the shadows. The intensity of their reaction is a direct measure of the distance they have traveled from their own professed values and the depth of their investment in denial. Your responsibility, then, is not to assuage this fear, to justify your stance, or to soften the truth to make it palatable. Accountability is not a negotiation. It is a principle in action. By standing firm, by refusing to participate in the erosion of truth, by aligning your actions with your values, you enforce the natural law of consequence. You force a confrontation with reality. The terror others experience is the inevitable byproduct of this forced seeing. They panic not because you are wrong, but because they are being compelled to look at themselves with eyes suddenly clear. And clarity, after a long blindness, is a shocking and painful light. Accountability in its purest form is not about punishment. It is about exposure. It reveals what has been concealed, traces the impact of choices to their source, and confronts individuals with the alignment, or glaring misalignment, between their actions and their deepest values. It is uncomfortable because it demands the very things so many avoid: self-scrutiny, raw honesty, and the courage to change. When you embody these qualities, you do not manufacture fear. You unveil the fear that was already there, waiting. Their panic is the proof of your integrity's power, the evidence that your clarity is an unavoidable force. Through accountability, you uphold not only your own standards, but also become a catalyst for awareness in others. Their terror is the long shadow cast by the sudden arrival of truth, a necessary, if agonizing, discomfort that is the only possible precursor to real growth, understanding, and a realignment with what is real. By confronting the world with consistency, principle, and unwavering integrity, you illuminate the path of responsibility. You become a living testament to the possibility of a life lived in alignment, offering a reflection, however daunting, to all who witness the courage it takes to choose authenticity in a world that so often prefers the comfort of a lie. To maintain your integrity and stand firm in your principles while those around you spiral into panic or resistance is among the most demanding disciplines of a conscious life. Your paramount responsibility in this tumult is not to soothe their fears, rationalize your choices, or rebuild the familiar comfort your truth has disrupted. Their unsettled state, the anxiety, the perceived threat, the disorientation, is born from the collision of your authenticity with the carefully hidden vulnerabilities and contradictions they've long ignored. That discomfort is theirs to navigate. Your covenant is with your own sovereignty, to remain rooted, to uphold your standards, and to act in alignment with your inner compass, regardless of the external weather. Too often, we confuse responsibility with appeasement. We believe that being good or kind means contorting ourselves to absorb the anxiety of others, to gloss over hard truths for the sake of a fragile harmony. This path, however well-intentioned, leads only to the slow erosion of the self, to a life of quiet resentment and identity built on compromise. When you choose integrity over convenience, you are rejecting this economy of self-betrayal. You are declaring that your presence will no longer be negotiated by the fears or unmet expectations of others. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. It is the recognition that your one precious life is not raw material for others' comfort, and that diminishing yourself to pacify their avoidance of reality is a form of spiritual self-annihilation. The first, and perhaps most liberating, step in holding your ground is to understand their panic as a natural symptom of exposure. When you act from a place of coherent principle, you threaten the delicate ecosystems that rely on ambiguity, unspoken rules, and the manipulation of predictability. Their tactics, criticism, gaslighting, emotional withdrawal, frantic gossip, are not responses to you, per se, but to the destabilization your integrity introduces into a system built on avoidance. Seeing this allows you to maintain a necessary detachment. You can observe the panic as a phenomenon, a sign that light has hit a dark place, without feeling compelled to jump into the fray and manage its fallout. Holding firm is an exercise in prioritizing long-term integrity over short-term appeasement. The pressure to fix it, to restore calm by any means, can be immense. But when you yield to that pressure, bending your principles to quiet their anxiety, you inadvertently teach them that panic works. You reinforce a dynamic where your boundaries are negotiable under distress. Conversely, when you remain steadfast, you communicate a more profound lesson, that true stability and trust are built on accountability and reality, not on the suppression of truth. This may create palpable tension now, but it lays the groundwork for relationships of substance, where your presence is respected, not taken for granted. Remember, the discomfort of others is temporary, but the compromise of your integrity leaves a permanent mark on your soul. Trading your principles for the transient peace of another is a debit against your self-respect. Each withdrawal makes the next easier, gradually blurring your moral lines and dimming your sense of agency. In contrast, maintaining your integrity, even amidst resistance, is a deposit into the foundation of your character. It reinforces the neural pathways of courage, affirming that your values are non-negotiable and that your worth is not contingent on anyone else's approval. It is also vital to recognize that the panic directed at you is often a projection of internal struggle. Their fear, their attempts to undermine or relabel you, are less about your actions and more about their inability to reconcile with their own unresolved conflicts. Your clarity holds up a mirror to their dissonance. Seeing this allows you to depersonalize their reactions. You can view their behavior not as a personal attack, but as the external symptom of an internal reckoning you have inadvertently triggered. This perspective grants you the emotional space to remain grounded in your principles, free from the hooks of guilt or the compulsion to over-explain. This journey requires disciplined patience. Standing firm does not mean engaging in every battle or reacting to every provocation. It often means embodying a calm, observant presence. It is the discipline of the non-reaction, of allowing the storm to rage around you while you remain anchored in your center. This measured consistency communicates a strength far more potent than any aggressive confrontation. People sense when someone is acting from deep principle rather than shallow emotion. That very sensing disrupts attempts at manipulation and commands a respect that cannot be demanded. Equally, integrity is protected by clear, well-maintained boundaries. These are not walls of hostility, but the intelligent architecture of self-respect. Boundaries define what you will accept, what energy you will engage with, and what behaviors you will refuse to normalize. They are the practical expression of your principles. By establishing and upholding them, you create a protected space where your integrity can thrive, your choices remain deliberate, and your presence is consistently aligned with your truth. Perhaps the most profound reward of this steadfast practice is its effect on your own psyche. When you consistently choose principle over pressure, you cultivate an inner fortitude that is unshakable. You build a core of self-respect that no external opinion can fracture. Your choices cease to be reactive impulses and become conscious declarations. This internal coherence generates a quiet, radiant power that inevitably influences your entire environment. It shapes relationships, alters social dynamics, and even eventually changes the perceptions of those who initially met your truth with panic. In the end, your primary responsibility is to the self you have.